Welcome back, everyone, to the Men of Issachar podcast. We have a very special guest this week. Mr. Nick Duncan joins us. Nick is very highly respected in the classical Christian school world. He is a very wise man, very well studied. As you'll quickly see, he has a lot to offer to this conversation, and I truly consider him to be someone who is representative of the Men of Issachar. So, I hope you enjoy this conversation. All right, welcome everybody to the third episode of the Men of Issachar podcast. I've brought some more friends in today. Mr. Nick Duncan, he's a good friend and someone wise that I look up to. Again, Terry Gant and Jeff Wright are with me, and I'm Jason Gall. So, what are we getting into today, guys?
Well, let's see. This is we've figured out we're kind of getting into a rhythm here of being the podcast that is a grab bag of cultural issues and whatnot, things of that sort. Partly because the men of Issachar, as we've mentioned before, are the men who knew the times and knew what to do, and so it's almost like we're all on like a 4 hot seats. So we don't have very firm plans here, but let's see to kick it off. I've been reading a book, and I will tell you about it if you'd like. Jeff, would you like? Okay,
I would like.
All right. So there's a fellow by the name of Raymond Ibrahim, who's a descendant of Egyptian Coptic Christians, and he's a historian by education. And so he operates a blog, which is an interesting read. I guess a blog is the right word. Where he details ongoing, like contemporary, like with our times, persecution of Christians, mostly in the Islamic world. And he has a couple of books out. He's got what is now about to become a trilogy. At the time that we're recording this, the book is actually not out yet, but it comes out in about a week. And so this is the third in the series. So the first one was called Sword and Scimitar, which is about the Crusades, and it focused mostly on the major battles of the Crusades.
I actually just got that in the mail because I love Defenders, which you're about to talk about so much.
Yes.
I reread it over fall break, and I was like, well, I've got to complete the set.
Yeah.
So
maybe they'll come in a box set in the future. We can get a collector's edition.
Yeah.
So Sword and Scimitar, you'll have to let me know what you think of that when you get done with it. So that one's mostly about major battles and sort of the aftermath, what led up to them, and what were the ramifications of the battles. Defenders of the West is the second one, which is primarily mini biographies of, I believe it's 9 Crusaders, if I remember the number right. It's somewhere in that neighborhood anyway. And that one...
We've all voted and decided it's 9.
Okay, good. All right. So you may have evidence to the contrary, but it's 9.
Nope. Democracy rules.
So that one is a really great read too. And I particularly would commend that one to people because I think biographies, and this may be a place to get opinions here, biographies are a good intro into history because it is the story of a person. So you have a character and you have their struggles, their flaws, you have all those things, the things that we can identify with. So if you like biographies, it's a really good one. You've got there, each guy has a chapter about the events of their life, how they furthered the defense of Christendom versus the invasion of Islamic powers. Some of them were crusades, some of them were the Spanish Reconquista. And then we have the last ones chronologically, they're kind of arranged chronologically. The last ones are the lesser known guys that were mostly in like Eastern Europe fighting the Ottoman invasion into Europe, which is a period of history that in America don't know real well. We're kind of familiar with the Crusades from movies and sort of the imagery of knights.
Well, and the shame campaign in our education that see Christianity's bad because of the Crusades. Mm-hmm. Every other religion that you can point to, like Islam, that's so violent. Oh, Christianity's just as bad because of the Crusades.
Yeah. And Ibrahim's, he does a good job of rehabilitating the Crusades. He's laying out a case for why the Crusades were not only justified, but morally upright, and that they were defensive conflicts primarily that the Christians engaged in. And then
I think I've told you guys, I just gush about that book.
Yeah.
But for our listeners, one of the things it did for me is it actually, I came away feeling a sense of shame and did some like authentic repentance because I had just bought without questioning the idea that the Crusades were morally bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized what I had done had been participating in the shaming of faithful Christian brothers who were doing what needed to be done in the time.
Yeah.
And so I came away from that book particularly challenged that I try not to be someone who takes any kind of narrative uncritically, but I had that one. Mm-hmm. And I'm very thankful to Ibrahim for flipping that on its head. Vlad Dracul in particular, you talked about like, we're familiar with certain things in the Crusades, but some is left to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's almost a satanic propaganda campaign that's been waged through the eras against him, who, by the appearances of the historical record, was a faithful Christian brother.
Yeah.
Something that's been put on my mind as of late is just immigration and how that is leading up to us necessarily making a crusade of sorts for Christianity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and really it's kind of the Reconquista model at this point. I was watching a video from Dearborn, Michigan this week where some Christian protesters were protesting something that is very sane. Like their protest was sane, something like protesting the sounding of the Muslim call to prayer over public buildings in their town. And they were surrounded and harangued by the Muslims, mm-hmm. right? So this idea that it's a peaceful religion at its core, that's a guise until they get a foothold, and then they begin acting like they acted historically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know that it'll be swords and spears, but there's going to have to be some sort of reassertion of the Christian West.
And that's truly a Reconquista in Dearborn, because I think they're Muslim majority now. Mm-hmm. I think they're like 50-something percent Muslim population.
Well, there's a famous video of their mayor telling a kind of a normal, white dude, probably some sort of cultural Christian at minimum, that he doesn't belong there because he's upset with the Muslim dominance of the town.
I mean, the writing's on the wall. Mm-hmm. Once it's overtaking, how do we take it back? Especially with the repopulation, like once they start having kids and once their kids are indoctrinated.
Yeah, this is an arena. The best solution here, and I'm not calling for anything that's not the best solution. I just want to be clear about that. The best solution is for the magistrate to exercise just powers under God's delegation and to expel those who are here illegally or here on some kind of legal facade. So we have to have deportations. Then we have to have an assertion of privileging Christianity in the legal code. And I guess that could weird people out, but it's been the dominant motif for civic governance in the Christian West, both Catholic and Reformation. And it seems to be quite clear from the primary records, it was the assumption of the framers of the Constitution. And so the best possible thing, the thing that all Christians should be praying for, is that the highest magistrate at the federal level and then the lesser magistrates at the state and city level would begin to exercise their just authority towards punishing evil and cultivating the good, the way Scripture calls.
Really, the law code that we've got in most places as it stands already kind of does this because it's based on the understanding of Christian ethics.
Right. Every I think 49 of the 50 states are based on British common law, which is rooted in Christian ethics. I think Louisiana is the exception because they're
based on French
Napoleonic code. Mm-hmm. I think there, but you plugged a book, so I'll plug another one. But Jeff was talking about privileging the Christian faith and how Christian governments have done that in the West. That's true of pretty much all cultures until modern day pluralism. Even before Christianity, even pagans believed that promoting religion was part of the public good. And so if you haven't read
Hammurabi,
yes, if you haven't read, the Chinese dynastic cultures were the same. Near Eastern, Far Eastern, Western, anywhere you look. The Greeks and the Hebrews talked about promoting religion as part of the public good. And so when Christians started gaining political power, they saw promoting Christianity as a part of the public good, and they felt like that was reaffirmed by places like Romans 13, which says that the government is to do good. And I'm a Presbyterian, so I confess the Westminster Confession of Faith. Yeah, sorry, I know Everybody
version?
Everybody at the table is
the American revision.
He's PC USA.
Yeah. Oh
no, not true.
Cut his mic.
That is not true. The American revisions. I'm an elder, so I took vows based on the Westminster Confession of Faith with the American revisions, but I do not dislike the original, but I also do not believe that the American revisions do harm to Christianity being promoted as part of the public good. I believe that they were not revised in order that America could be pluralistic. They were revised in order that America could be broadly Protestant, so that Virginia might be Anglican and North Carolina might be Presbyterian and Tennessee might be Baptist or whatever.
Amen.
I know. I'll throw you a bone here. I know when I'm in the minority.
Amen.
So, yeah. So James Baird is a teaching elder in the PCA, and he recently has released a book called King of Kings, where he argues that it is
from Founders Press, a great Baptist imprint.
From Founders Press, that's right. And he argues in the book that Christianity should be that it's the civil magistrate's job to promote good. Romans teaches us that. Other places in Scripture teaches us that. And if the civil magistrate is supposed to promote the good, then the one true faith should be part of promoting the good. And so that's just to plug Baird's book, because I just finished reading it and it's really good. I think it's very accessible. Laymen can read it, but definitely I think elders should be reading it. Especially like my denomination, the PCA, we have a study committee this year to study Christian nationalism. And so there's a lot of debate and discourse about what the civil magistrate's role in religion or not is. And I think this book gives a really helpful way forward and roots back into the way, not just Presbyterians, but all early American Christians up through, probably the period between the Civil War and the World Wars thought about promoting religion as a public good.
So, Terry, I know I'm the one who led us away from the book you were actually going to tell us about.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give that kind of theme back to you. Before I do, since we have mentioned talking about natural law, what you're getting at there, Nick, is that every society's governance must be governed by a religious vision.
Yeah.
Even cannibals participate in cannibalism for religious motivations.
Right.
It is inescapable that government is going to reflect some kind of religious and moral vision. It's inescapable. So, Terry, tell us about the book I interrupted you from telling us about.
Okay, well, so we talked about the first two, right? Sword and Scimitar is the first one. Defenders of the West, I think, is an upgrade from that. And I just finished the Two Swords of Christ, which is if you liked having the Crusades rehabilitated for you, this one might be interesting to you because this is rehabilitating the Knights Templar and the Knights Hospitaller.
Oh, my conspiracy tinfoil hat just started wobbling.
Well, it's probably going to be settled down, actually, because a big part of what he covers here is it's just a chronological historical narrative of their founding, why they were founded, the things that they did through the Crusades, until the Templars kind of went extinct in around 1300s.
There was a specific eradication date for them, right?
Yes, there was. Yeah. Well, sort of. So they were all over Europe, right? And they were in the Middle East and other places. They had castles kind of everywhere. And the King of France at the time was a scumbag. And that,
Shocking.
Yeah.
I had a professor in college that would say, the French, always there when they need you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this guy decided that he didn't want to pay back his enormous debt to the temple, which he had borrowed money from. And so he found a disaffected knight that had been booted out for misbehavior and got him to accuse them of all kinds of insanity, which includes a lot of things like occultism, devil worship, communing with demons, among other things that are unmentionable. And so he... The Pope at the time was a figurehead for the French king, and he did not help them. And so all the Templars in France were eventually hunted down and burned at the stake.
Like Order 66.
Yeah, basically. Now the other countries didn't buy it because they were like, well, this is clearly politically motivated. He wants their castles and their money and stuff like that. But the order really never recovered, so they kind of just went extinct. And the Knights Hospitaller actually still exist. The Knights of the Hospital of St. John the Baptist, which is, I think, technically its own sovereign entity. Like it's like a country, kind of like the Vatican.
Really?
Tiny little micro thing. They have sovereign relations, but there's not a whole lot to it. But a very detailed history of both of those, and he will disabuse you of some of the conspiracy stuff, because most people who think of the Templars think of, like, I don't know, the Da Vinci Code, the Freemasons.
Yeah, they started the Freemasons and then created the Illuminati.
And I'll let you read it to find out where the connection is there. There's not one. Sorry, spoiler alert. But
so many hours of podcasts just got ruined.
And he kind of lays out his history for that, but he pretty much says, no, the order went extinct, and anybody who came along later claiming that they were sort of the descendants of these, like the ideological descendants of the Templars, just borrowed the name. Mm-hmm. And there's more than one, like the Rosicrucians. Mm-hmm. There's a few others that have said, like, we're the continuation of the Knights Templar, which actually their real name is the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ. And they got the name Templars because their headquarters was the Temple of Solomon, or the Temple Mount. That's where they were given that after the First Crusade as like a base of operations. So very interesting read. And I need some time to reflect before I decide if I liked Defenders of the West or the Two Swords of Christ better. But it's in high contention, I think.
Okay. Well,
so that'll be out on the 25th of November. So depending on when this comes out, you might can go get it.
Elites get it first. The rest of us plebes have to get it
afterwards.
Well,
I reviewed his last book for American Reformer, and so I reached out to him on X.com and asked if I could have an advanced copy, and they sent me a digital version.
Nice.
So they were very kind of Skyhorse Publishing, if I remember correct. So
the Templars were not the bad guys trying to destroy principled pluralism.
No.
And it turns out Orlando Bloom stopped.
It turns out Saladin was terrible.
Shocking.
You're telling me for the first time? I'm just hearing of this now.
Yes. There's some. This is a reference to the movie Kingdom of Heaven, which is a good movie and a terrible rendition of history.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be better in the director's cut, right?
I've heard that.
The extended cut is better.
I've actually never seen either one. I know the memes of the guy in the mask and stuff.
Baldwin the Fourth.
The film's a good time. It's just
it makes the Christians look like the bad guys. Specifically, the Templars.
The Templars are the bad guys.
Are the antagonists of the whole thing,
and they kind of want Jerusalem to be Christian, and they're like, no, the Muslims and Christians and Jews can all live here peacefully together. That's kind of the motif of the movie.
Now, I will say this about the Templars and the Hospitallers as well. Part of the reason why they developed that reputation historically is because with much long experience with dealing with Muslims, they figured out that Muslims don't always tell the truth. And so there were several times when Muslims would reach out and say, we're going to convert to Christianity if you don't attack us. And some of the more naive crusaders that were recent arrivals to the Holy Land would be like, oh, great, wonderful, this is great. And then on the way back, the Templars would just like attack the ambassador train because they were like, no, they're not. And that's, you can pass judgment on that if you think that's hasty. That's the kind of thing that wouldn't fly today with Big Eva.
Well, it also seems like that's the error we continue to take up, right? Mm-hmm. Like a religion that in its sacred text says it's not wicked to deceive what they view as pagans.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We just ignore that.
Yeah, Ibrahim is actually really good on that specifically. He's very knowledgeable about Muslim doctrine. And so there's little sidebars in the book where it's like, here's why this is ethical for them, why they can do that, according to their
within their
teachings.
framework.
So they can lie, and then they have another, I can't remember the Arabic word for it, but they have another one where they're allowed to use double entendre to kind of obscure the truth. So if a guy said, the example he gives is, hey, can I borrow $1? And the guy says, I'm sorry, I haven't got a penny on me. Well, clearly the implication is that you don't have $1. But what the Muslim would be able to say is, technically I didn't have a penny, but I did have a pocket full of dollars that I could have given him. But he didn't lie.
But isn't Muhammad referred to as the great deceiver?
By them?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
I think in their book, yeah.
Well, he encouraged them to basically lie as long as they had to get the upper hand. And once they have it, then they don't have to anymore. So.
Well, and this is like the downside of people who've been shaped by the Christian ethic for centuries. We believe strongly in telling the truth because Jesus presents himself as the truth, mm-hmm. right? So any kind of deception is an assault on his character, but it just leaves us naively very susceptible to groups that are happy to deceive.
Yeah, and the Templars, that was one of their chief rules, was that you cannot lie. Like in any context. So they were what we would think of today as Roman Catholic. So we wouldn't agree with everything. They were monks in their lifestyle. So there's some things that we think that they probably withheld from themselves that is extra lawful, like it's exceeding, like Pharisaically. But one of the things that it did result in is that they were extremely single-minded, and they were very, very good at fighting. They won many victories against impossible odds. I mean, they were easily 10-1 in combat ratio, kill-death ratio. So, great stories. It's an emotional roller coaster, much like Defenders. There's a lot of losses, and it's hard to read because he does detail what happens in the aftermath, and the Muslims did not treat their conquered adversaries with any kind of dignity at all. But there's also some great heroic victories. So if you find that stuff interesting, there's even a story in there that he relates as a historical fact of a dragon slaying on the island of Rhodes by a knight of the hospital.
Yeah, I'm very interested.
Now I've got Jason's attention now. Should I go into that more?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to hear that. All right, so apparently Rhodes, the island of Rhodes, this is the same place where the Colossus of Rhodes stood, which was one of the wonders of the ancient world. The Knights of the Hospital built a fortress on the foundations of the Colossus of Rhodes because it had already collapsed, and they just kind of used the groundwork. But the story goes that there was a giant serpent of some kind on the island that was killing shepherds and livestock. And eventually knights were going after it, but then none of them came back. And so the master of the order said, nobody go after the serpent. I'm tired of losing guys to it. But one of the knights decided he was going to do it anyway. So the trick that he came up with is he went back to his home to where like his family lands were, and he built a model of a giant dragon, like a giant serpent. And then he trained his dogs to attack it whenever he struck it with his sword. And so he goes out there with his dogs, and he goes in and finds it and fights it. And while the serpent's trying to get him, the dogs start tearing it up. And so the serpent turns its attention to them, and he's able to get a sword into it because he wasn't able to strike through the scales. Like he couldn't slash it. So he managed to get kind of up under it and get it in the stomach. And he killed it. And so part of the reason why Ibrahim brings this up, because it sounds like a fantasy story, is that it appears in multiple records. And that there's lots of people who said things like, yeah, the skull of it hung from their castle for like a long time until it just kind of rotted away. And this is coming from several accounts that didn't veer off into mythology. They're actually recording like it's just records of the knights. So according to other sources outside of the Christian tradition, various cultures referred to Rhodes as the Isle of Serpents, and there's like references from other peoples that are kind of pre-existing this that suggest that there was some kind of serpent-like creatures that lived here. Maybe this is the last of them. It could have been a crocodile, maybe a giant crocodile or something like that. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I listened to the Haunted Cosmos this morning to plug another podcast, and they were talking about an American dragon, and it was the what's the name? It was the Snallygaster. I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me guess. The Smithsonian came in and seized all of the remains once the Snallygaster was destroyed.
It was laid low by some farmer with a lever action, probably.
No, they hung up a cow, a dead cow,
to try to lure it in,
and lured it in, and had a hook in it. I mean, they went fishing for this dragon. So
that's very American right there.
Yeah.
You know,
everything likes beef. That's right. Almost as good as bison. That's right. Almost as good.
Well, you don't want to give the Snallygaster your bison
That's
meat.
True.
You know,
that's true. Hey, this is kind of a veer, but since an early theme there was books were recommended, I'm reminded that I think today or yesterday, Dr. Jared Moore's new book, I think it's 33 Days to Freedom from Lust, came out. And I'm very optimistic about that book. Jared was one of the first people who are willing to point out in public the obvious deception of the sexual ethics that dominated evangelicalism for maybe 8 to 10 years, from the 2010s to the 2020s, where aberrant sexuality was treated as some sort of warping of good instincts like friendship and whatnot. He was one of the first to point out the destructive consequences in advance that we've now seen come to pass because of warped quote unquote ministries like Sam Alberry's. And he's now moved on from sort of taking that lie down in his previous book, I think
the lust of the flesh.
Lust of the flesh. He dismantled that and showed it to be inconsistent with both Scripture and the Christian tradition, the Protestant Christian tradition. Now he's offering people a way out, and it's. I'm hoping to publish a long review on it, but it's the best thing on the topic.
Well, you've read it already.
Yeah. Okay. He gave me an advance copy.
He gave you an advance
Who's
copy.
the elite now?
Yeah. But the guy I went to grade school with. But anyway, I thought Lust of the Flesh was probably the best book published in evangelicalism the year it came out. This is a book that I plan to give out like Johnny Appleseed. And
it's the first in a series that's planned, I believe.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the approach is. I assume it's going to be something similar, like 33 Days to Freedom from maybe another sin. Is that the idea?
I think he's trying to do a kind of a practical sanctification, which is surprisingly. At one point, I'd read someone say the best book on sanctification that evangelicals have ever written is Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. There's now been a book written called The Unending Journey, I think, as a practical book on sanctification that is probably the second best since Bunyan. I'm hoping Jared will do a series on this. And just to kind of whet your appetite too, friends, he has amazing returns on what he's doing in the book before through his private ministry. I know a story that I think is pretty widely published at this point of a young man who thought he was transgendered, began reading Jared's material, repented of that, ran into Sam Alberry's material and thought maybe he was wrong to listen to Jared, but eventually the Spirit of God won out, and I think he's happily married and maybe with a kid now.
Yeah,
praise God.
Yeah, Jared related a few stories last night talking about this very issue of he got a save the date for a young man who's now he's engaged to a woman who came out of, having to repent of homosexuality. So
anyway, get that book. It's not expensive. It's the kind of thing that probably churches should have on their table in their foyer.
Now that might be a good pastoral resource for guys that are helping counsel. You may, if you're not sure what to say, then, and I think Jared's probably pretty accessible. So if you need to follow up with questions, you can find him.
That's definitely a subject that I don't think gets enough attention, and I don't think people realize that once you're into that sexual sin, that it's not just something you take part in; it's something that you're forced to grow in, and it leads to darker and darker places.
It's like its own kind of dark sanctification, setting you apart to darkness.
Yeah, it's a dehumanizing. It more and more makes you less human. Whereas sanctification, of course, you die into sin and grow more and more into Christ's righteousness, and
the way humans were,
human.
the way humans are meant to be, and modeled for us in Jesus Christ.
Yep,
the perfect human.
Amen.
All right, shall we move into the meat of the episode?
I think so.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, and then we'll see what happens next. What are conservatives supposed to be conserving?
That's a great question, and it's a great question because this is incredibly muddy. One of the things I'm most depressed about, well, two things kind of in the public realm that have depressed me, is that we continue to have this phenomenon of people who were very liberal 6 years ago. But as the left has become more radical, they have found themselves alienated from the radical left, which is most of the left politically in our country. And so they now identify as conservatives. I've taken to calling them less liberals. People like James Lindsay, who will talk on social media about checking out girls with his lesbian daughter. He's supposed to be a conservative voice.
Right. And an atheist. And
an open atheist. A guy that I once had some hope for, but I think there's less hope.
And probably even more popularly, you could probably throw Elon Musk in that basket.
Yeah, Elon's a less liberal.
Brett
Jordan
Weinstein.
Peterson is a less liberal, although I think, I'm really hopeful for Peterson still.
Brett Weinstein.
And so what that's done is just completely destroy any real meaning to conservatism at the popular level. I also kind of tend to refer to these guys as Daily Wire liberal because their vision of a healthy society is Bill Clinton era United States.
Barbecuing in the backyard.
Is it Dave Rubin who's in a long-term sodomite relationship and they've bought a child to mock adoption, right? These are supposed to be conservatives.
Go back to Reagan era.
Conservative in many circles.
A return to Reagan era America.
Right. But I mean, you think about a guy, is it Andrew Clavin, who's also a long-term homosexual? Supposed to be a dominant voice. It's either Andrew or Spencer. I can't remember which one's the dad and which one's the kid.
I think maybe it's his son, but I could be wrong about that.
Andrew's the dad, so it'd be Spencer.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I want the best for these people. They shouldn't be a voice at the table among conservatives, let alone seen as leading lights.
Yeah.
And so the idea of conservatives figuring out what we're supposed to be conserving is, it's not as important as preaching the gospel clearly and authentically, but it's at a civic level, maybe the most important question.
It's like it's Romans 1 and you're off the page, right?
Yes.
Because there are things in our culture that aren't even in Romans 1.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like conservatives, I'm using air quotes, now want to return to just kind of like halfway up the page of Romans 1.
Well, again, that's the Bill Clinton thing.
Instead of actually repenting of sin.
Mm-hmm.
Can we take this back to sort of bud form rather than full bloom? Is supposed to be the vision of conservatism.
Yeah.
That's the Daily Wire critique that
it's
I
more
have.
of a pruning of the weed.
Yeah.
And less of an uprooting of the weed, I guess.
And I guess I feel a burden to qualify. Like I love Matt Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
Megan Basham works for Daily Wire. There are elements there that I love, but the Shapiros and the Borings and the Clavins and whatnot, it's something worse than a red herring. It's some kind of very compelling counterfeit that's robbing us of the resources we need to do the actual thing.
All right. So Daily Wire, no. We got one. This is a helpful.
Except for Matt Walsh and Megan Basham.
This is a helpful parameter.
That's what I
All right.
heard.
Well, let me ask it. Let me redirect the question a little bit, because the question of what are we supposed to be conserving. Conserving implies that you're holding on to something that has been, right? So how far back should conservatives be looking, right? We've just been complaining about these guys saying Clinton, Reagan came up a little further back in the 80s, 70s, 1910,
Pat Buchanan,
1776. Where are we going?
So I think the idea of conservatism is that in a fallen world, good things are hard to cultivate, excavate, and preserve. And so this is something like mining,
Okay.
where you're pulling resources out that takes an amount of labor and work that is just, I don't know the right word, but just strenuous.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we pull out artifacts that are good, true, beautiful, healthy, that's what conservative is ultimately about. So what we want to do, I think, is instead of thinking of a golden era, I think we should think about what have previous generations surfaced that are authentically good,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we maintain and carry those things into the future. You can imagine a field maybe out in Arkansas where you pan for gems.
Right.
Previous generations found certain gems. How do we keep them?
Mm-hmm.
How do we bring them to bear in our present moment, and then hopefully find more?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer. And it's the idea of there being a golden age. I think that's one of the, you said red herrings earlier.
Yeah.
We need to get back to a certain point. Well, no certain point was ever perfect, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Or good enough.
Yeah.
I would
Right.
also say that too.
Right.
We think of progressives as always hungry for more.
Mm-hmm.
There does need to be something like that on the right, where
Mhm.
we're consistently saying it's just not good enough. We need better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just trying to hold on to. I think when we think of conservatism, we think we're trying to hold on to the things that are good and not let them fade away. But that kind of implies that you don't really have a positive vision for what the world should be like. And so conservatives really need to, I think, reframe the way they speak about things to speak of the world as a positive vision. What do you want the world to be like that you would live in? And some of that will be trying to excavate things, as you said, and bring them back. But you can't point to any one particular era because they're fallen humans in every particular era.
Mm-hmm.
So they're always, every age has different cultural sins that it has to deal with. And that's been true throughout all of our country's history. And so I think you have to, what was good from that era that we want to bring back? What are things that are totally lost? Like there are some things to hold on to still, but there's some things that are totally lost. I heard someone say just last night, it's not are you feminist in America? It's just how feminist are you?
Right.
Because it's just the air that we breathe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about LGBTQ world a little bit, and feminism, abortion, all these things are attacks on creation. And so we're so far gone that fundamentally we really need to return to Genesis and say, what was the world that God created and what did he intend for it to be like? And how do we pursue that?
Yeah. So Genesis and the New Jerusalem,
right?
Like those are the targets.
Yep.
And of course, that's the work of Christ to bring it past, but he's pleased to work through his agents.
Yeah. He uses means.
Right. He uses means. And so nobody here thinks that we're going to bring about the millennium, whatever your eschatology is. That's Jesus' work.
Right.
But Jesus does his work through his people. And so we have to be giving ourselves to that effort.
Yeah. And if I may expand on your mining analogy, I think there are also new things that are being revealed to us that are new targets for us. And just to make that analogy, and one of the things that I'm studying to do right now, I'm looking up some different elements that are essential for a manufacturing of a yet to be told endeavor of mine. But if you mine zinc, some of the offshoots of that or some of the waste are like gallium and indium. Those elements are gathered from the waste of zinc mining that previously had no use for anybody. Nobody even knew about them. So that's new things that are being revealed. And new targets that I think are being presented to us, new targets to hit.
Yeah, well, you know infinitely more about that than I do, Jason, but I feel like I have to just affirm what you're saying because that assumes that the Lord has a future for the people who dwell on this earth and that the resources that he built into the creation, like gallium, have some creational purpose that he intended mankind to discover and utilize for his glory. And so I can't talk about that specific, but in principle, I assume that is right and that we should. I mean, it goes back to Nick's idea of a positive vision for conservatives. We need to take ground, and maybe it's through implementation of underutilized elements. Sure.
All right. So practically speaking, where could a listener go to find where good work is being done in the mines? Like who's doing this stuff?
That's a good question.
And some of this could not, I mean, maybe it's the preservative stuff. Like I'll just start with American Reformer because that's who I'm affiliated with. But their goal is to reinvigorate American Protestant civic and social thought. And so they're going to forgotten sources of Protestant thinkers who have answered a lot of the questions that people are having right now. And they've just been shelved and forgotten about. And when COVID came through, everybody suddenly panicked and was like, we don't have a political theology. So everyone started looking for these things, and there was a handful of experts that were kind of niche experts that were like, let's start a blog basically or a journal. And so they're going through the shelves, blowing the dust off of stuff that has already been mined out of the ground for us. But I don't know who else. What else? Where are people finding things that are?
I think
if we're conservatives at work, I guess.
Sure. If you're thinking about, I brought up feminism, and if you read scripture, it's super obvious that God made men and women differently, and he made them to do different things. They're equal in dignity, but men are made to lead and to rule, and women were created to help. And we just don't really have categories for that at all. And so there's a couple books by a teaching elder in the PCA. Sorry, that's a Second Presbyterian.
If you're going to talk about Zach Garris, that was who I went to.
I'm going to talk about Zach Garris. So Zach Garris is a teaching elder in the PCA, and he has a book called Masculine Christianity, which really is just him walking through all the scriptures and doing it's very pastoral. He's doing pastoral work to look at what do these texts say about men and women. And so he's looking at the scriptures. He has a kind of a follow-up to that called Honor Thy Fathers, which is not particularly looking at the scriptures, but looking at the same topic on men and women and what the Orthodox Reformed, the Reformers, and some of the later Reformers like the Westminster Assembly had to say, kind of their commentary on the scriptures and what they have to say about men and women. And so if you were wondering what should I believe about men and women, I would point you to those two sources, and they'll point you back to scripture.
Well, So Garris is where I was going to pretty quickly. Michael Clary is a pastor in the Cincinnati area. Michael Foster is also in the area. He's done a lot of work on sort of the same area. It's Good to Be a Man. He's done good there too. Michael Clary wrote a book called God's Good Design for men and women, for households. There's a guy named C.R. Wiley who's writing on households, masculinity. That's very helpful.
And he has a book that's been around for quite a while called
Man of the House.
Man of the House, yeah.
That's another book I give out now. It's interesting to me. I mean, Terry went to American Reformer, which is true. Civic thought needs to be developed. But to your point about feminism being the air that we breathe now, it really does. My mind immediately goes to people who are bringing clarity to the topic of what has God purposed these genders to do.
Yeah.
Because feminism has not just muddied the waters. It's almost completely obscured.
Yeah, right. It's poisoned the waters to the point where you can't hardly drink of it.
Yeah, it's such a dominant influence on our society that it is something like asking a fish to consider wetness, right? And so these guys, Jared Moore is another one. These guys who are stepping out and saying, actually, Scripture's pretty clear on this, and we don't have to pretend like it's ambiguous. Those are where my mind goes immediately. So Garris, Clary, Moore. And just to throw something else into the hopper, Terry and Nick have a real expertise in classical Christian education. Everybody around this table has suffered within classical Christian education for trying to just own what's normal on these very topics we're talking about. Classical Christian education is a good endeavor to recover the idea that education is discipleship. And so we want to have the best form of it, right? And what we talked about, what's true, good, and beautiful. Well, the best form of it, the most true, good, and beautiful form of it that we've encountered yet is classical Christian education. And so the various groups that are working on that are very important to the future of our country if Jesus tarries. But beyond that, to the kingdom. And it's gotten to a point of significance now that it is the target of intentional efforts to subvert it and to cut the legs out from under it, which is kind of part of what we suffered as well. And so we've got American Reformer on the list. We've got Garris, Clary, Foster, Moore on recovering God's design for man and woman. And then you've got classical Christian education as a kind of a comprehensive framework for raising a new generation that will have a much better understanding of these things.
Yeah, I would point to the Association of Classical Christian Schools specifically as something to look for if you're interested in the education component. Because there's others that are classical, and I don't know them well or don't entirely trust them. So
yeah,
something that kind of, in a way, at a very broad level, sums up all of those things as well, is that the work of American Reformer, what Zach Garris has done with speaking about feminism and patriarchy, and what the ACCS has done. I heard the president of ACCS, David Goodwin, say one time, classical Christian education doesn't change, but our discovery of it is growing, because the classical Christian education movement started because of Dorothy Sayers' essay, The Lost Tools of Learning. And in it, she references this medieval way of doing education. And so in the late 70s, early 80s, Doug Wilson, a couple other places, there's actually about 3 places in America. This is how I believe that we providentially know that the Lord was doing a work there, is because there's 3 different places, totally unrelated, in America that all started classical Christian schools within about a 3 or 4 year stretch of each other and didn't know about each other. And so they all found this essay. They're all trying to recover what is this medieval way of teaching. And so now that it's been, 50 years, the more we've read the medievals, we started reading the ancients, of course, our discovery of that changes. It's the same way with like political thought, trying to read the reformers and what they say about men and women and scripture. It's going back to the sources. So that's the Latin term ad fontes, going to the source, I think is just generally a helpful principle. I mean, I know we've been giving sources to go to, but for everybody also to just do their own reading by going back to as many of the original sources as they possibly can. I think that I would make the argument that even our Reformed documents speak of the fifth commandment in this way. So the fifth commandment is to honor your father and your mother. And the Westminster Larger Catechism says something like, I actually think I have it pulled up. So let me just read it to you. This is question 123 says, what is the fifth commandment? The fifth commandment is to honor your father and your mother. Your days may be long upon the land the Lord's given you. And question 124 is, who are meant by father and mother in the fifth commandment? And the answer is, by father and mother in the fifth commandment are meant not only natural parents, but all superiors in age and gifts, and especially such as, by God's ordinance, are over us in place of authority, whether in family, church, or commonwealth. And thinking about people that are in authority over you has to extend to past generations. And so a recovery and an honoring, really what we're talking about is piety, not piety in the popular way we think about it, but piety in the way that pretty much all Christians would have understood piety until about 10 minutes ago, is an honoring of your authorities over you. And that would extend to your historical authorities, your fathers and brothers and mothers and sisters who came before you, who have things to offer to you. And so I think American Reformers doing that with political theology. I think Zach Garris has been doing that. ACCS has been doing that. So just generally an encouragement to people to dive back into, go as far back as you can. I mean, even the project of the Reformers was, of course, to recover the scriptures. But if you read Calvin and Luther, they're talking about the church fathers. How did the first few generations of Christians understand the scriptures? They're reading Augustine, they're reading John Chrysostom. It is, of course, ultimately a project about understanding the scriptures, but also what did our fathers that are worth honoring believe about these things? Well,
it's an ongoing project, right? So we talk about Semper Reformanda, right? Yeah. Which is how you got Baptists from the Reformation tradition.
I knew we couldn't escape without that.
But that noted, I went to that mine analogy earlier, but probably family is the better one. So like with my family, I grew up in a family that was pretty tight-knit. I didn't understand at the time, but it was uniquely tight-knit. Everyone in the family had something good to say about Jesus. Jesus was held in high regard. Even those who weren't practicing their faith held Jesus in high regard. Well, I was never catechized, right? We went to church, but I was never catechized. And so one of the things I can do in sort of that, what did one generation surface that's helpful? How do we carry it forward? Well, I was given a high view of Christ. Thank God. Yeah. I was given a high view of God's word. And the appropriate way for me to carry that forward is to catechize my children and be intentional about kind of the spiritual disciplines that my family did not necessarily lead me in. I can do that with my children. Yeah. And so you're hopefully building from strength to strength.
You're taking something good and building upon it even better.
Yeah.
Can I play devil's advocate for just a minute?
I'm already antagonizing Nick about the Baptists.
No. Okay, so let's go to some bigger organizations. Let me get your opinions about them. So, Turning Point.
Yeah, I'm really thankful for Turning Point. And they're not just in a crisis because of Charlie Kirk's assassination, but their significance is so clear to everybody now that there's multiple factions jockeying to be the inheritor of Charlie Kirk.
The sharks are in the water.
And so I'm thankful for Turning Point. And I think we should pray for Turning Point because they are in a crisis situation.
Well, I can tell you from speaking to people at Turning Point, actually, that there's different kind of divisions, right? So they've got Turning Point Faith, Turning Point maybe Action.
I know those two.
And then there's Turning Point Education. And I spoke to a guy at Turning Point Education, and he was, that conversation went really well. And he said that we're actually moving more, the term doesn't seem to apply greatly here, but we're moving more conservative. Our statement of faith is about to be altered to become a explicitly Protestant one. We're not going to exclude Catholics from joining us, but they've got to just kind of deal with the fact that this is a Protestant thing.
Yeah.
They want to see it move in that direction. And I've heard from other places that Turning Point Faith is not moving in a good direction. So,
well, I think Charlie Kirk's wife is Catholic, isn't she?
I believe that's right. Yeah. So, we'll see. But there's multiple interests. It's a large group. They've got a large donor base. They got a lot of money. and that's going to bring people with dubious intentions. So yeah, they do need prayer. But at the moment, if you're just asking for my review of Turning Point, I think they're a good organization.
Yeah, I think so too. Next would be like World Outreach Church, Alan Jackson.
I just am not familiar enough to comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, he has every year a big conference called Culture and Christianity, and he highlights a lot of the issues that the church is dealing with. Charlie Kirk was slated to be there again. Lots of relevant speakers. So I think that's worth checking out.
Okay.
World Outreach Church, that's in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Okay.
Canon Plus, which is
or just Canon in general.
Press.
So Canon's kind
Canon
of part
Press,
of the larger
and
the Moscow, Idaho crowd.
Yes.
Which gave us, if everybody doesn't know, kind of gave us one of the three centers of the recovery of classical Christian education Nick was talking about earlier.
And the most prominent one,
Yeah.
So thoughts on Canon and its corollaries?
Yeah, I'm generally thankful for Canon. Now, just in full transparency, I think some of the guys in this room have heard me say that. I have familial disagreements with them.
Yeah. That's a
There
good
are
way to
times
describe it.
where I feel like they're the crazy uncle at the party and then at the family reunion. And there are other times where I'm like, that's the most venerated uncle at the get together. And I'm in this spot. I mean, you can just understand there are people who I think criticize them from within the family that have valid critiques. But anytime somebody criticizes them from outside, I'm like, well, let's get our shotguns and let's go, how dare you? Very
Fields and the McCoys.
very Appalachian
we'll go
hillbilly redneck.
on you, right?
Yeah. And so generally very thankful for Canon. If I had the screwdriver, I would tighten some of the screws here and there in different ways, but generally very thankful for them. And so Canon Plus is sort of the way that you can easily access it online, right?
Yeah, virtually all their content, I think. Yeah. And I would kind of echo that sentiment. I'm broadly in agreement with them. There's a few details that I'm not thrilled about, but I hope that their project continues to enjoy success.
Yeah, Canon Plus, if you have a family, I think is a really great tool. I know our family has in seasons had Canon Plus, and there's lots of great content for children on there. There's cartoons and there's really thoughtful children's stories. Nate Wilson, whose pen name is Indy Wilson, has the Stories or Soul Food podcast, and that's a really helpful place if you're a parent and you're trying to think about what kind of stories do I give my kids. I think that's a really good resource, there.
And they've got kind of something for everybody, really.
Yeah.
They've got parenting books, they've got marriage books, they've got
My
children's stories.
My wife has a cookbook from them.
Okay, yeah. See,
I've made a recipe from their cookbook that you turned my attention to. So with the Canon thing as well, narrative is one of those deals that hopefully most people listening to this already understand how important that is for children. You probably wouldn't expect me to positively quote Karen Swallow Pryor on this podcast. She has a book called On
She was
Reading
next
Well.
on his
We
list.
are
to ask
officially in waters that I did not expect.
I am now in Daily Wire territory. But she made a very good point in the book. I wouldn't recommend much of what she puts in the public sphere, but in the book, she said that stories allow us to enter into situations that we wouldn't know how to face in the moment of crisis. So stories give us an early opportunity to workshop those things. And to go back to your point about biographies, Terry, biographies are a better version of that, right? And so
it's people who have actually lived through those crises.
So I want my kids knowing the story of Edmund being tempted by the White Witch, and I also want them to know the story of Skanderberg trying to save his ancestral land from an invading force and having to not just fight the invading force, but the betrayers who should be aligned with him.
Yeah.
And it gives me a clarity at a distance. Skanderberg's choices can't affect me directly or immediately. Edmund's definitely can't, but it teaches me how to anticipate those things. And you want your children weaned on the right kind of stories.
Yeah, that's really helpful because autobiographies are biographies and autobiographies are history, and
which is the greatest story.
Which is the greatest story, and we are often told that the reason why you would study history is so you're not doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past, which is true. There are vices that you read about in history that you want to avoid, but it's also the opposite. There are also men and women that are virtuous, that are worth emulating, and we want to read about their stories. And I think that's why the culture is so adamant about tearing down history and heroes, right? This is why George Washington's a bad guy now, and nothing, Robert E. Lee never said anything good, even though these were virtuous men. And stories do the same thing. It's just in your imaginative, your moral imagination. So biographies and autobiographies and stories, like you said, they allow your mind to think about people that have faced situations where they failed. It's not even just about the heroes. There are stories worth studying, stories worth reading, so that you don't do whatever the hero did or the protagonist did. Not the hero necessarily,
from mistakes, but also like
The Great Gatsby is one example of where there's vice. It's like you read that story, it's an engaging story. F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing is engaging.
If you say so.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. But you read it, and what you learn is adultery really does kill.
Sure.
It's.
I'm rooting for all of them to be hit by a meteor every time I try to read that. But you're right.
That's pretty much what
it's like Breaking Bad,
right?
It's
a figurative meteor, but everybody's life ends pretty miserably.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it's like Breaking Bad.
Catastrophic stories are helpful.
Yes.
And they tell you that actually ruin does come from bad choices.
When sin is full grown, it actually does bring death.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, the stories of these crusaders mentioned Skanderbeg, and then I've been reading about these guys. Sometimes that story is how do you behave when the end is come, when you're not going to get the thing that you want?
Yeah.
What should Christians think when they're evicted from the Holy Land, that they believe God has turned his back on them? And reading those guys' actual words about their thoughts, their prayers, very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Can be
helpful.
helpful.
Nick has put Robert E. Lee's reflections upon the I can't remember the term, the post-Civil War destruction of the South.
Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he felt it virtuous and important to remain optimistic about what good could be done.
He was hopeful all the way to the end of his life.
Even as the land that he loved so much is being brutalized.
And kind of
that's helpful.
And went back, and I think lived in a world where he said, we've lost a lot. How do we regain those things that are good? And he decided the way to do that was education. So he devoted pretty much the rest of his life particularly to higher education.
Yeah. Well, he saw, right? And he saw what the Marxists have seen, that's also a way to destroy things.
Yeah.
I guess the final point on those story kind of deals there is that we do live in a world of men with clay feet. And so I'm an evangelical, kind of with your heroes. You've got R.C. Sproul dying well. You've got John MacArthur dying well. And then just
Vodi
Bakum dying well. Then you've got a list of guys that I looked up to. Their books are on my bookshelf. They've made shipwreck. And postmodernism pushes us to believe that there's nothing actually good, authentically good. Everything is sort of ruinous. The movie Wicked is out in theaters. It's the classic postmodern story. Turns out the bad guy is actually the good guy. The good guy is this secret evil person. This is postmodernism's effect on us. And are y'all familiar with the dead hero theory? You probably are, but do you know about that name?
I don't believe so.
It's this idea that you shouldn't have any heroes who are still alive.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah,
because if your heroes are still alive, they can just they can
disappoint you. Yeah, well, you sometimes hear that never meet your heroes, which I think is kind of a similar sentiment. Like they're never what you think they are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There may be some teeth to that.
Yeah, kind of living through it.
Unless it's Luke Skywalker talking, unless it's Ryan Johnson talking about Luke Skywalker, in which case.
That's very precise, Nick. It seems like there may be some trauma there when you do explore.
Disney tried to destroy my childhood.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, George Lucas did that to me in 1999. So,
the point being that I think that reading history does tell me actually good men, not perfect men, but good men exist. And some of them make it to the end well. Now, I hope my kids, to whatever degree they think of me well, my ambition is that they would say, Dad died well.
Yeah.
Right. But history gives me a litany of men who I can say, this actually does happen. Postmodernism is not right. All the examples of men who fail very close to the finish line, that's ultimately not the final word either. There are people in history that you can look to who finish their race well. And it helps it remain a credible ambition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful.
All right, what you got any more? Jason, you want to lay on us?
No,
okay,
no.
just throwing a few other miners out there.
Well,
this is the
I'll
mining
give you one.
episode. That's going to have to be the title, the mining episode.
I'll throw one out there and just let me go ahead and say the views stated here are Jeff Wright's alone and do not reflect necessarily the other men of Issachar. But I'm going to say that for the state of our public discourse, I think Tucker Carlson's doing really important work. He is being destroyed by what I would call false accusations in certain arenas. But I think he's basically the last high-level journalist we have.
Yeah.
He talks about things that people in private conversation are talking about all the time. But we don't have the journalistic resources to suss out what may be true there. And so he just recently released an episode on the would-be Trump assassin in Pennsylvania. I can't count the number of conversations I've had with people being like, what is this guy's deal? What do we know about him? We even had the FBI telling us like, well, he's just basically a ghost online. Tucker actually went and did journalism and gave us a host.
And in 30 minutes, I listened to that episode. In 30 minutes, he told us so much about that guy, and we knew nothing.
Yeah, it was 30 minutes, and it was infinitely more than we'd gotten from any other source. And so, again, there are criticisms of him out there. By his own attestation, he is a baby Christian who is trying to learn the faith. So sometimes he'll say things about Christianity where I'm like, Tucker, I would probably tighten that screw a little differently.
Yeah.
But in terms of journalism, I don't know anybody comparable. And so I'm really thankful for Tucker Carlson.
Yep. I would co-sign that.
Yeah.
I think the argument against what he did with his more recent interview is give light to, or give time to the wrong side.
Well, I don't want
the Nick Fuentes
thing. Fuentes thing. Yeah, I have nothing good to say about Nick Fuentes other than he does raise the voice of the questions and the objections of his generation in a unique way. That's the only good thing I can say about Nick. And so I don't want to kind of re-enter that debate here within this room.
No.
That said, Jason, where I come down on that is I think it's within the purview of a journalist. It may not be the choice I would make, but I also don't see it as some scandalously crazy thing. So I can remember...
This is the same guy who interviewed Vladimir Putin.
Right.
Remember?
Yes.
Well, he also actively interviews people from the left. I mean, I can't remember her name, but it's the lady who has been on Young Turks for years.
Yeah.
And he's interviewed her a couple times, and she's a pretty far leftist on a lot of things. She's one of the people that now kind of gets lumped into the not so left middle that you were talking about at the beginning of the episode, because she won't go with the radical left on some things. So, I mean, that's probably why he's interviewing her. But she's way left on a lot of things, and he doesn't get filleted for interviewing her.
Yeah, and Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee is one of his most vocal critics. When Seth was being canceled, Tucker had him on his show. So, again, I may not make every choice the same way.
Yeah, I probably would have interviewed Nick Fuentes, but he's a journalist, and he can...
I don't really want to talk to Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, he can interview who he wants.
Well, I'll tell you this.
I'm afraid if I interviewed, I'd have to actually talk to him some, so I don't think I would do that.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be an interesting conversation if I did that. That said, what I said about Nick is I do think he gives voice to his demographic.
Well, he's popular for a reason.
There's something going on there. And so as a guy who doesn't listen to Nick Fuentes ever, other than clips that show up on Twitter, it was helpful for me to hear that. And I actually think it's helpful because if we want to disarm a guy like Nick Fuentes or Andrew Tate or some of these voices that are ostensibly on the right that we would say are not helpful, we've got to provide a better alternative. And so hearing Nick raise...
We need Christian men raising the questions that Nick Fuentes raises.
And answering them better than he answers them.
In a godly way.
Yeah. And so again, I might have done some things differently, but ultimately I was even thankful for that interview because I realized where the work is with young men now better probably than I did before.
Yeah.
Are any of you guys familiar with George Janko?
Mm-mm.
He's a comedian now, but he's a very strong Christian, and I would point you guys to his interview of Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
That relieved all doubt about Jordan Peterson being a Christian.
Yeah. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I prefer for Jordan.
Well, Jordan, he has always been very standoffish about answering whether or not he's a Christian. And his argument is, I don't like the way the question was asked, and they were backing me in a corner, with that. Yeah. And that's always the reason that he has denied that question whenever he's asked that. So I would highly recommend that episode specifically.
George Janko?
Janko.
Janko, okay.
Yeah, but that really shed a lot of light on Jordan Peterson, because I've looked up to Jordan Peterson, not on all levels, but on many levels for a while now. And I really appreciate some of the things that he's done. His studies on different books of the Bible and things like that really showed me a lot that I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise, in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peterson was kind of a prototype for, you were talking about Andrew Tate and Nick Fuentes, and that I don't say that to bash Jordan Peterson, but the younger millennials, older Zoomers came to Peterson because he was offering order to them in a chaotic world. Yeah. And I think that's part of the appeal of some of these guys. I mean, even a guy like Andrew Tate, who's a villain, is trying to, he's trying to enrich himself ultimately, but he's at least tapped into an actual market demand of we're tired of chaos. So this is a great place for the church to step in and be able to answer the same, you have the questions, don't go ask that guy. Don't go to ask Nick Fuentes. But also, we're not going to run you out the door if you ask an offensive question to us.
Well, to that point, you can cultivate a market by selling base things.
Yeah.
Right. You can cultivate a market by providing things that no one should want. So like the porn industry exists.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's close to Tate.
Yeah.
But there is a thread there with Tate that you're talking about that overlaps with Jordan Peterson that actually is important to conservatives, because he's offering a vision that is alternative to feminized masculinity. It's the wrong one. But that doesn't mean the underlying desire for a better vision than what these young people have grown up with is wrong.
Well, how many pagan, and I wouldn't call Tate a philosopher. Peterson I would. But how many pagan philosophers have gotten the diagnosis right, but not the cure right?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is part of the reason why Nietzsche continues to be a draw for lots of folks, is because he's right about a lot of the things that he's pointing at and saying, these are the problems, and here's my solutions. And the solutions are all bad because they're not biblically based.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess, kind of. Where I don't read Nietzsche because he's, what you don't want to do is adopt Nietzsche's worldview wholesale, because you'll end up a suicidal nihilist. But when somebody, and even Marx, right? Marx is a guy that everybody in this room hates, but he was right about some of the diagnosis. He got some of the problems. He noticed them. The reasons why they were problems, he didn't get right. The reasons, or how to solve them, he didn't get right. So we have a long history of people showing up, identifying the problems rightly, offering bad solutions, and in the absence of good solutions, people go to that.
Yeah.
Which is where guys like Fuentes and Tate come from. Peterson's in a different league from them, I think. But
there is something similar there in that with Peterson, order instead of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Tate, thriving as a man.
Yeah.
Fuentes, young people don't have a vision of how they can participate in society economically.
Yeah.
That is kind of an Issachar thing.
Yeah.
To be able to say, okay, there's a whole bunch of garbage here, but there's actually something helpful here for the people who want to actually do good to their neighbor. Mm-hmm. They can help them understand the issue better. So now let's get to work providing something better as an alternative vision.
Right. So a man of Issachar knows the times and knows what to do. and they know the times, but they don't know what to do. So that's where the gap is. Yeah. I think.
Well, I know where I'm going to buy my Christmas tree.
Oh.
Where's that?
Duncan's tree lot.
That's right.
Serving the Upper Cumberland. And you can drive to the Upper Cumberland very quickly from lots of different places in the world.
You
like
can.
Louisiana
we have
Arkansas,
111 north and south. We have Interstate 40 east and west. It's an easily accessible area.
Tell me about your trees. These are not junk trees, right?
No, they're not junk trees. They are Appalachian grown Fraser firs, which in my opinion are the best trees to have for Christmas.
And Appalachian trees will shoot at intruders.
That's right.
Yeah. That's one of the things
they have. They have shotguns built into the trunks.
Do not pull up into the driveway of a Fraser fir.
Now you got to keep them away from alcohol, but they will. What's the advantage of the Fraser fir? You hear about Christmas trees. Everybody kind of thinks pine trees.
Yeah,
pine's not really the ideal.
Pine is not the ideal. Pine are really sappy, and any tree,
like Hallmark
especially
movies.
evergreen, have sap. Yes, just like Hallmark movies. Pines have a lot of sap. They lose their needles at a pretty quick clip.
Alarming rate.
An alarming rate. And Fraser firs they have the best needle retention. You might vacuum a couple times while you have it up for, depending on how many weeks you keep your tree up. So for some of us, that's longer than
and
others.
how many toddlers you have in the home will affect the shedding rate as well.
But they have great needle retention. They last several weeks. They'll last well through the Christmas season. And you make a clean cut at the base of the trunk, and they'll drink water for a lot of weeks and stay nice and fresh. They smell great in the house.
That's my favorite part of a live tree.
They smell
the smell.
The whole
it just smells
house
like Christmas.
Will smell like Christmas. Yeah. That's right. And they can only grow at certain elevations, and so the Fraser firs come from tree farms primarily in Appalachia. So the trees that I will be selling in Cookeville are grown in western North Carolina, particularly in a place called Avery County. So I actually lived there for a chunk of my raising, and my dad was a pastor there, and we lived in a parsonage, and the church's house that we lived in, it was just Christmas trees as far as the eye can see. And so we always had artificial trees up until that point. And we moved there. The locals quickly told us no one has an artificial tree up here. And so
artificial trees don't go around here.
That's right. And said don't let artificial intelligence do your thinking, and don't let artificial trees do your treeing. So you need a real Christmas tree. Yeah.
So what's the address for the GPSs?
It is 200 North Old Kentucky Avenue.
Old Kentucky Road.
200 North Old Kentucky
Road. Yeah.
In Cookeville,
Tennessee. So you can come by, or we'll have fresh cut Fraser fir Christmas trees and wreaths, and garland, tabletop Christmas trees as well, if you want a centerpiece. So that'll be starting this Friday, which is the 21st.
Yeah.
And so we'll be selling on Friday and Saturday. We'll take a break for the Lord's Day, then we'll be back on Monday, and we'll sell all week, the week of Thanksgiving, and into the weekend after Thanksgiving, and we'll sell as long as we have trees to sell.
Just think of it as an unwoke Hallmark experience.
That's right. The true and better Hallmark experience.
Yes.
Nick, you're talking about the source of those trees you're selling. Was that area affected by Hurricane Helene?
Very affected. Yeah. So my parents still live in the area. They do technically live in Tennessee, but they're only, probably a mile and a half, 2 miles from the North Carolina border. And my brother and sister live on the other side of the mountains in North Carolina. And they were all thankfully minimally affected, but tons of people that live around them were devastated. There's one, if you're familiar with Appalachia, of course you have hollers, and then at the bottom of the hollers, where the mountains kind of run into these sharp ravines, they're called bottoms typically. And so there's one particular place called Beach Bottom, which is at the bottom of the holler that my brother lives in. And there were several houses in Beach Bottom that I used to drive by all the time. And when I went up there to visit my brother and look at his property, make sure they were okay, after Helene came through, all the houses in Beach Bottom were just gone. If you didn't know they were there, you would have never thought anything was there. Gee. It just looked like a creek bed. So very, very affected. There's still people that are making it living in campers and things of that nature, and rebuilding. And so, yeah, if you're a prayer warrior, and I hope you are, if you're listening to this, the people of Appalachia could still use your prayers recovering from that hurricane.
Well, and very practically, what was behind my question is that, I mean, this is an extension of some miles, but you're doing commerce with people trying to rebuild their lives after Hurricane Helene by buying their Christmas
primary
trees.
Commerce that the folks in Western North Carolina do, where I grew up, and the places where I'm talking about, Avery County, Watauga County. If you're familiar with Boone, it's near there. Those folks run Christmas tree farms, and they cut them like crazy in October, November, and they ship them all over the place. My dad's best friend has owned a tree farm for a long time, and he's sold trees to the White House before.
Oh yeah.
And so it's actually the preferred tree of the White House. There have been Fraser fir trees in the White House more than any other type of Christmas tree. So,
yeah. So I mean, you could go help the people still suffering from the effects of Helene by buying a tree there and hauling it back, or you could let Nick bring it this way for you.
That's right. And you don't have to even drive up there. You can just come to Cookeville.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you guys for joining us. If you have any questions, you can email us at issacharpodcast@gmail.com. Anybody else?
Yeah. Aren't you contractually obligated as a podcaster to end an episode by saying leave a rating and review on your favorite platform because it helps other people find us?
Like and subscribe.
Do it. Like and subscribe.
Smash the like button. And ring the
No,
bell
really.
so you get
Share it on your
notifications.
socials.
No, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to leave you with a track with one of my good friends, Mr. Marcus Hill, Bury Me There.
I heard the warden say, here's a dead man walking. Guard gave a nod, pointed me to my cell. Seems like ages I've lived in cages. Might seem strange, but I liked how they felt. The drink put me down and the pills woke me up. Spirit came by to feed on my lust. Hooked on a craving, smothered in doubt. Then I found Jesus and he broke me out. I'm on a run to the river, hey preacher meet me there. Bring the undertaker, not a moment to spare. Running with the old man, don't be scared. Meet me at the river, meet me at the river. Gonna bury me there. Running through the woods, God chasing me down. Flashlights howling, I grin at their shouts. If I make it to the water, I can throw off the hounds. Cause the man going in ain't the man coming out. I'm on a run to the river, hey preacher meet me there. Bring the undertaker, not a moment to spare. Running with the old man, don't be scared. Meet me at the river, meet me at the river. Gonna bury me there.